The biggest thing that helped me in preparing to serve was studying Preach My Gospel. And I had actually studied it before I decided to serve a mission. But there were just certain things in there that, because I studied them before, I was more familiar with it as a missionary. And I just felt more spiritually prepared, and I knew what I was getting myself into, I guess. And I think the most important thing that I learned while I was in the MTC was the importance of listening to the Spirit and letting the Spirit take the lead in lessons. And being in the MTC was very humbling, because I realized that I was not the teacher, but the Holy Ghost was the teacher. And there was one investigator in particular who we taught, and I'm pretty sure he was a real investigator. I think there were a few investigators in the MTC that were paid to be investigators. They were professional investigators who came. And he was very well versed in the Bible, a very good person, and he had a lot of genuine questions, but he didn't really understand why it would be so important to have more if everything was in the Bible, and I didn't really know how to answer his questions. And he took up a lot of my thoughts in the MTC, and I knew that I was supposed to be learning something from teaching him, but I didn't know what it was. And after our third lesson, we walked out, and I realized that I had been focusing way too much on myself and being able to answer his questions and knowing what to say. And we weren't focusing nearly enough on his needs and his spiritual growth and what he was looking for. And so the fourth lesson that we had with him, this was our last lesson, and we sat down with him and we just asked him questions about himself and really got to know him. And I realized what an incredible person he was, and how before we had just been trying to convince him of something that we believed was true, but we hadn't really been listening to his side. And so we left that lesson without leaving him any commitments, which isn't the right thing to do. You should always leave a commitment. But we definitely fulfilled our purpose in bringing him closer to Christ and helping him understand the role of the Spirit and more of God's love. And that experience actually applied when I was a missionary out in the field. We had an investigator just like him, and it wasn't until after the third lesson that we had that I realized I had been doing the exact same thing that I was doing in the MTC, but because I had written that down and remembered that experience, I applied that in the mission field, and it was basically a repeat of what I had learned in the MTC. So that stands out to me.